I am interested in developing theoretical explanations for how people relate online, and I try to see what I can find out that generalizes in close interpersonal relationships, group work, if there are some things that we can discover about how people relate, the strategies that they use, the techniques that they adopt and reflect, that can work in some settings or many settings. I think we get ahead very well that way. And so I'll be presenting some very general kinds of propositions, but also some results from different kinds of studies, not always online dating studies. In fact, few of them from online dating studies, but some that I think will help illuminate the processes that I think are important and bear in this area also. This is a screen capture from one of the advertisements from You've Got Mail, and it'll come back. I made myself an intellectual puzzle over the past couple of days, and it was see if I could find a general linear model that would help us describe what happens between the time people are matched in an online dating service and the time they might get together face-to-face and come up with a dependent variable, HAE, that's happily ever after. And let's assume for a moment that an eHarmony or a Match or some other system has the perfect algorithm, and they can make a perfect match of some people based on their computational or computable compatibility. This assumes that the backbone algorithm is very, very good, and it assumes that the participants are very, very honest when they fill in the checklist, choose the categories. Yet, even though this may be true, some online matches succeed and some online matches don't lead to happily ever after. What might be the other important boxes? I think one in which I'll talk about today is the component of mediated communication, including relational escalation, and how people communicate with each other online during a transitional phase from the first match to the eventual face-to-face encounter, and how, getting back to the title of the talk, how internet communication may escalate things in ways that are actually more intimate, more surprisingly intimate than we might expect, or in this case, desire. And then the next component, and this is with a minus, is bandwidth-based discoveries, including face-to-face meeting. During the process of transitioning from online to offline, many studies report individuals use more and more different kind of media with more and more bandwidth and more nonverbal cues. And I think many people in our field talk about nonverbal cues and do it blankly. I like to look at them very particularly. I'll talk about some nonverbal behaviors that I think could be some real turnoffs. You know, the history of research on computer-mediated communication started, as Bill pointed out, with some deterministic assumptions that without nonverbal cues, people will not be able to relate well to one another. I'll counter-argue with you today that nonverbal cues may be the worst thing you can do to your online relationship, and we'll discuss why that might be. So these are the areas I'll try to focus on today, and I think these are the areas where some research in the future can focus on as well. This is a cartoon. This is at least 10 years old. This was from Playboy. We went out a few times, and we just couldn't recapture the intensity that we had on the internet. And this kind of recaptures some of the dynamics I'd like to talk to you about, is what the internet does that makes things so intense that face-to-face maybe cannot catch up with. And to do that, I'd like to review the hyperpersonal communication model, the hyperpersonal model of computer-mediated communication, which is about how users may exceed parallel face-to-face outcomes via computer-mediated communication. The model has 4 components, and I'll introduce them to you and then try to demonstrate them through some research findings. What happens, and the 4 models are very conventional: sender, receiver, channel, and feedback. You can't get more conventional than that. What happens in sending messages, in creating messages that may be a little bit different online than we can afford face-to-face? Well, it's in a very Goffman-type sense. We always engage in self-presentation, but I think the amount of selectivity of self-presentation online can be greater than that which we're capable of doing offline in many cases. Very mindful construction of messages and no nonverbal leakage of undesirable cues. I looked at least 20 pounds lighter until I showed up today, and that's over now. But if I could type my way out of it, I probably would, and usually do. This is why, of course, on the internet nobody knows you're a dog. We've known that for a long time also, but your dogginess doesn't leak if you can type your way out of it. The second component is receiver. When you get messages from somebody else online, we think there could be some idealization processes going on. When we detect even a modicum of attraction to somebody, there may be psychological processes leading us to over-attribute similarity, either because of group-based, social category-based information, as Monica just mentioned, or because of any stereotypical assumptions we might make about the type of person, even if it's not a group-based kind of identification. But we make over-attributions of similarity. We get no indication to the contrary that our assumptions may be wrong or our over-attributions may be wrong until some further evidence shows up. And we engage in this process of filling in the blanks the way we want them to fill in. A student once heard me make this presentation, and she said, so you have to fill in with something you know. What do you know best? Well, you know yourself best. No wonder it feels like you've known these people all your life. The channel, another important component, and I think online communication, text-based communication, offers real mechanical and environmental advantages. People can take advantage of the time to compose a message, especially if they're asynchronous. You can write and rewrite all you want. So there's time composing, editing, rewriting to enhance messages, to make them reflect you just the way you want, the selective self-presentation aspect, to deliver the wit, to deliver those aspects that are intentional. And a certain amount of cognitive reallocation and mindfulness is available. In face-to-face communication, there's a lot of things we have to spend energy doing. Paying attention to what's happening around us in the physical surroundings, noting if somebody comes into the room, leaves the room, is there a sound we have to overcome, are you nodding as I speak, am I looking to see if you're making eye contact. That's a lot of work. We do it intuitively and naturally. We have to do none of that work when we're writing to somebody in the privacy of our computer screen. And so all the communicative energy we might spend elsewhere, once again, gets reallocated to writing messages. Those messages ought to look pretty good. And finally, the feedback processes, I think with somebody idealizing, with a couple of people, one is idealizing, and they're idealizing based on highly selective messages that they're getting. This can lead to a mutually fulfilling prophecy that leads to pretty intimate communication. Preconceptions, of course, affect the way we treat other people, and other people respond according to the way we treat them. So with the selective self-presentation and idealization spiral, this should lead to interesting kinds of reciprocation and escalation of relationships. That's why these relationships online are really cool. And this shows up in the movie when Joe Fox says in his typewritten message, "Don't you love New York in the fall? It makes me want to buy school supplies. I would send you a bouquet of newly sharpened pencils if I knew your name and address." On the other hand, this not knowing has its charms. Here's a recent study that looked at some of these components. I think I skipped a slide. And maybe I did. Nope. Well, we won't find it. This is a study we did that involved a number of students in an experiment, and it was not a dating study or a romantic kind of relationship, but it was an important study to test one of the elements of the hyperpersonal model, the selective self-presentation aspect. Two elements, the selective self-presentation and the channel aspects. We induced students to think they were going to participate in an online conversation about the future of technology in education. And a student would either be working with a very distinguished but very popular professor at another university. This was our manipulation of high attractiveness, and where there should have been a high motivation to engage in all this selective behavior and intentional behavior and so forth. Or a student would be assigned to work with a high school student from a technical vocational high school whose hobbies were spending time alone and bowling. This was our unattractive manipulation, and the pretest said we got it. The control condition in this study was you will be working with Susan, who is participating in this research, or you will be participating with Bob, working with Bob, who is participating in this research. Nothing else said about them. That's our control condition. These are the dependent measures we were looking for. The amount of verbiage, the percentage of personal language, language complexity, affectionate language, how much time do they spend writing, degree of editing, which was counts of backspaces, deletes, inserts, and so forth. How much mindfulness do they self-report. We also checked their typing speed, because that could have a lot to do with these things, and indeed it did. Typing speed, now I really am missing a slide, and I can't see where it is. Well, I'll tell you what that said, and I apologize for the missing information. There were some very complex findings in this study. No gross effect on typing speed, and no gross effect on editing. Editing was the one I was really interested in. There was not a gross effect on it, but there was a complicated three-way interaction effect. It depended on the gender of the subject, the gender of the target, and the role or status of the target. If it was a woman's subject, she edited more if she thought she was dealing with a female, a woman with a woman. It was the professor. Edited more to brown nose the professor. If it was a male with a male, editing more with this technical vocational high school student. I'm not sure why, maybe some kind of bootstrapping. But whenever the gender effect was crossed, it was a male with a female or a female with a male, much more editing in the control condition. All apparently you need to know about somebody online is that they're the same as you and nothing else except that person's the opposite sex. And that's where you carefully edit your message. That's where there were significant differences, a higher level of backspaces, deletions, insertions, and so forth. So our students didn't know anything about Susan except she was a girl, and for our guys that was all they needed to know. The less information, the better. So this is assumed hot until proven otherwise, I think. And there was also a correlation between the amount of editing that was done and the affection expressed in the message, and the it was the affection and I think mindfulness also. There was other effects of mindfulness when they we did a median split on this. Those who reported very little mindfulness, the time they spent writing their message was more related to just getting those words out than it was to editing those words. But those people who reported that they were thinking about it, just as they might people be thinking about the effort they put into building the online profile, when they were thinking about it, they got the words out and then spent the time editing to make it just right. So there was a difference in terms of the cognitive energies people were putting in and what they did with it. So this is an experiment that looked at some of the machinery of selective self-presentation, some of the nuts and bolts of it. We also have done some research looking at the gross effects, and this is a study we called "Is a Picture Worth 1,000 Words?" You could show somebody a picture, or you could type for a long time to tell them who you are, and we'll see what the answer was. The independent variables in this study was a photo image versus a text-based relationship development, and long-term or short-term groups. Dependent variables: affection, social attraction, and physical attraction. And the correlate was a self-report of how much effort people put into managing their impressions. This was a tough experiment to do because we took a whole semester to do it. We wanted to, this was in '96 actually, groups composed of students at the University of Manchester and students at Northwestern University in the US. We put them in groups together, and some of the groups worked together, half the groups worked together on projects 3 times over the course of the semester. Now here we are at the end of the semester, they'll work together one more time. The other half of the students, we kept shuffling. They would do one group project, then we put them in a group with different people, and then put them in a group with different people again. Here we are at the end of the semester, they're going to work with a brand new group of people with whom they've never worked before, and this is crossed by the opportunity to see a photo before the discussion. And so, again, the people in this quadrant here, they've been working together a long time and never seen each other. Now they're about to, and you can see the other parts of the 2x2. This is what it looked like if you were in the instructions. This is the control condition with no photo. Here's the names of the people. Click here to go to a MOO-based discussion group where only your people will be and work on the task. And here's the other condition. And in this group, for these people had been working together all semester long. This was the first time they saw what they looked like. 2 American students and 1 British student, and here's the results from that. If you were in a short-term group, never worked with the people before and never will again, a photo helped out. It relieved uncertainty, made you feel better about where you were going. But if you were in a long-term group, we really saw an interesting hyper-personal effect in that these people were more affectionate with one another, were more attracted to being friends and maintaining relationships with one another. But those who saw the picture took a nosedive. The picture, it seems, was a disappointment compared to the kind of hyper-personal relationship they'd built up through text only. Another interesting finding from that study was this. On ratings of physical attractiveness, I think my partner has a pretty face, I think my partner is good looking, and so forth. We found this relationship. When there was no photo, then impression management efforts, how much effort people reported putting into their communication with other people. We had a very strong positive correlation with how attractive the partners thought these individuals were. In the condition when the photo is showing, you see a negative relationship, also very strong, with perceived physical attraction. Once your picture is up, these were random students, not bad-looking people. Once your picture is up, the harder you try, the worse you look. There's kind of a grounding once the photo is up. If you try too hard, people suspect you or something. We're not sure, but the photo seemed to have a real anchoring effect on what people were able to do with their language beyond that. This makes it understandable, this cartoon about a guy who met his wife on an internet chat room, conducted their courtship online, got married online, have no intention of ruining it by moving face to face. This is a smart man. I mentioned nonverbal communication. What happens, we know from many studies that people who are connected online, who meet each other either in discussion groups or who meet each other through matching services of some kind, tend to go through some kind of incremental increase in the bandwidth of the communication channels that they use before the face-to-face meeting. And some studies have shown that people who skip this and go right to face-to-face after a little acquaintance online don't tend to do very well. So people go from the communication system to dyadic email to a phone call, a photo if one has not been exchanged, and then face-to-face. Now what can happen as these bandwidth increments take place? Well, the voice, we do things with our voices that aren't always lovely, and that first phone call is going to tell us a lot. The voice pitch may be different, so the voice may be higher. A man's voice might be higher than you expect, a woman's voice lower, or anything like that. The rate of speech, an accent that was unexpected, an accent that is not well thought of by the receiving party. Interruptions. Nobody interrupts each other online, but in face-to-face, men tend to interrupt women, and that, of course, is not very welcome. These are things you would never know online, but pretty much can't be helped in an offline situation or telephone situation. Then face-to-face, other kinesic and proxemic cues come into play. Gaze, eye contact can be avoided. A man might look at a woman's body rather than in the eyes. That would be an unwelcome surprise. Or just not look at somebody, periods. It could be indirect. Distance can be too close or too far. Turn taking can be awkward, and so forth. Again, these are unconscious behaviors that only show up once we get face-to-face, and they would certainly detract from a very kind of idealized impression one would have without that. I think we can draw, I've suggested we draw on Michael Sonnefrank's predicted outcome value theory to see if we can apply that to increases in bandwidth and the impressions that we get. Sonnefrank argues, as others have argued, like social penetration theory, that when we're uncertain, we communicate with people to gain information about them. Information is gleaned to reduce uncertainty, although Sonnefrank is most specific in saying that we don't just always like people more the more we know about them, even if it fine-tunes it. Sonnefrank's the one who I think most explicitly says, we evaluate new pieces of information. They are either potentially rewarding, or they suggest that future contact with this person would be unrewarding. When we learn about somebody, it's thumbs up or it's thumbs down. One should lead to escalation, one is more likely to lead to termination. And I just wonder if incremental increases in bandwidth follow this kind of decision rule. I think that would be an area for interesting new research. Ramirez, Art Ramirez, who's now at Arizona State, he's taken some of these ideas and done an original experiment. This does involve dyads, and this involves people, this is students once again. And it's not dating, but it is, they were assigned to be buddies with one another, get to know each other, and I think it was a cross-sex pairing. Ramirez suggested that hyperpersonal communication has another potential effect, that it inflates our expectations for the other people over time. If we're having a positive relationship, we may expect that to carry over into how they really, really are. New information that we get then is compared to expectations. If consistent, relationship stabilizes. If information violates expectations, it could be negative, which would lead us to terminate, or it could be positive, which would lead us to escalate. Ramirez suggested a quick face-to-face meeting, pretty good. A late face-to-face meeting, pretty bad. And this flies in the face of some of the other research on people who've met online, who said spending months getting to know each other is beneficial. Ramirez suggests maybe not so. Here's the conditions in his experiment. He had pairs of students who worked together, or who communicated with each other frequently over several two-week periods. So the interaction time was divided into thirds. And he changed modalities for some of them. So the offline condition, these people had to meet face-to-face and get to know each other. There was an online condition that people stayed only over the internet with one another. Online, offline, offline. And the results suggested that people who met face-to-face, moderate attraction to each other over time. It was normal, some high, some low. It was average overall. Online had a hyper-personal effect. It progressed higher, but eventually was higher than the face-to-face relationships were. Online, offline was curvilinear and moderate. In other words, meeting face-to-face caused a little initial spike up in attraction, but after that there was that was a nice surprise, but it didn't last. Online, offline led to a rise and then a very sudden drop. People were disappointed once they had gotten to know each other online. Then meeting face-to-face, again, a big disappointment in terms of what they were like. This, unlike the previous study where we talked about a picture, did involve fully engaged face-to-face interaction after having been in a dyadic interaction online. I think this is important evidence. This would suggest the Intel people were potentially right. This is how you ought to meet people somewhere soon along the way. Or you better just stay online all the time, as this painting by Magritte would have us to believe. One of the problems, of course, one of the influences leading to hyper-personal interaction, the hyper-personal model so far that I've talked to you about has been based on situations where people did not have some kind of exposure to one another's photos in the first place, or other kind of greater modality than text-based communication in the first place. Now, what could happen in the first place? We have some nice systematic data, and Monica referred to some of it earlier, about some distortions that go on in online dating presentations. So Nicole Ellison and her colleagues interviewed many online daters and said they felt conflicted. There's a desire for authenticity and accuracy, but a desire for impression management. They have to navigate this conflict somehow. And they do it through some distortions that show up in some cases by selecting which category. If you just turned 30, you might just pick the 25 to 29-year-old category because that's an artifact of the system that shouldn't be imposed on you. There's wishful thinking. You may enter the weight that you think you will probably be by the time you meet somebody. And then there's picture selection effects also, as we've heard before. Guys picked the picture when they had more hair and less waistline and so forth. Thoma, Hancock, and Ellison did the research on deception online, Monica referred to. Women distort weight, men distort height. For both, physical appearance accuracy corresponds to the accuracy of the entire profile, so apparently there's something there. One potential remedy, I think, has to do with a new idea we've introduced called warranting information. The idea of warranting information is that there may be information available to someone you have met online that they will consider highly reliable, that they will consider a good piece of information that connects your online claims to your offline reality. And what kind of information might that be? Well, self-disclosure that's positive, easily dismissed. Self-disclosure that's negative might be more true, but still could be manufactured. What's real? Well, here's our formal definition. The warranting value of information about a person is derived from the receiver's perception about the extent to which the content of that information is immune to manipulation by the person to whom it refers. If I can't mess with it, then it's probably true. If it's information about me that I can't control, that might be trustworthy to you. So I need to refer you to information that is very, very plausible to you. So an institution, if you go to the Michigan State University website where there's information about me, and it doesn't look like I put it there, it looks like the webmaster did it, that might be more warranted information about who I really am compared to my online dating profile or the home page that's completely under my control. A public website with comments by others is probably, where my picture appears, is probably really more what I look like than the photo I email you in terms of your trust and its reliability. Other statements about what I'm like might be more valuable to you than my statement about what I'm like. Access to the social network might be useful also. People there might see me in my uncontrolled states and tell you what I really do and say. They can corroborate, provide accountability, And Toma and colleagues found that the people who create online dating profiles, the more of their offline friends who know about this, the more honest they tend to be in their online profiles, which I think provides some evidence they suggest of warranting also. And finally, social networking, sites specifically for social networking, might provide some advantages in this of this type also, because the social networking sites, there's information that the target gives, plus information the target does not control in terms of what one's friends says about them. We recently finished a study using Facebook to test this proposition. This is Chris Smith. Chris Smith is often a female. Chris Smith is also the name we use when we're using the male version of this study for counterbalance. In this study, we manipulated some of the personal info here, which was self-statements, and then the wall postings of the friends. And I'll show you what we did with that. This Facebook self-statements suggested either the person was attractive or unattractive. About me, just hanging out, getting better looking every day, dance clubbing, quotation, all you have to do in life is go out with your friends, party hard, and look twice as good as the bitch standing next to you, Paris Hilton. We scrubbed Facebook for real quotations to use. These came up. These we had to tweak a little bit because Facebook's a pretty happy place. These weren't happy statements. I like to hang out online. I'm trying my best to lose a few pounds. Quotations, judge not according to the appearance. So either of these about me sets was accompanied by a compatible or an incompatible set of wall postings. One of the wall postings said, if only I was as hot as you. Another comment, haven't seen you since that great party last weekend. My friends thought you were hot. I was looking at the pictures Caitlin posted. I always knew you were more attractive, but looking at pictures of you and me together, damn. It's tough research, but somebody has to do it. Finding these statements out there. Hey, gorgeous, you look great last night. You're bringing sexy back. So this might have appeared with the person's self-description of attractiveness, or it might have been contradictory to the person's statements of unattractiveness. Likewise, the following statements could have been crossed either way also. Have you lost weight? Good job. Keep working at it. Don't pay attention to the jerks in the bar last night. What matters is on the inside. Much better picture of you. The last one wasn't that flattering. I'm so sorry things didn't work out with that blind date you went on. Who knew he would be so shallow? And so you can imagine this is a 2x2, and sometimes this was consistent, sometimes it was not. The result's very simple. The friend statements overrode the effect of the self statements very consistently. So if the friend said you were attractive, people thought you were attractive. If a friend said you were unattractive, people bought it. The most attractive condition is when your friend said you were attractive and you yourself said you were trying to lose a few pounds. So there seems to be some self-deprecation that people appreciated. But here the warranting information seemed to be valuable. What the friends are saying is not something I can bluff, make up, or manipulate in a Facebook setting. That's what your friends post. You can delete what your friends post, but you can't post what your friends post. So it might have some utility in that respect. So these girls are talking, and one says we went out a few times, we just couldn't recapture the intensity we had on the internet. Well, why is that? Because the internet is prone to hyper-personal distortions of just how good-looking, well-kept, smart, articulate, and lovable we are. Increases in bandwidth certainly can detract from that. But maybe future research to try to get this perfect state of equivalence between the perfect match that the system can generate and happily ever after depends on these second boxes, how we present ourselves online, which we will always try to do as well as we can, and then perhaps need to be counteracted. Monica suggested maybe research needs to look at the social categories people belong to, and I wonder if that, in addition to that research, if finding more ways that we can get people in touch with others' idiosyncrasies rather than social categories might be an equally as helpful characteristic. Some data we have on successful transitions and happy couples. I think we need more data on negative outcomes. What makes people decide not to meet? Monica gave us some great examples. We need more systematic studies. Now, those couples are harder to find than the people who post success stories, but these are the people who can tell us what went wrong so that other individuals, system designers, and others can realize how things should go wrong. You should make discoveries, but it shouldn't be a struggle, and it shouldn't happen after the meeting. And then data from people who finally did meet and wish they had not can probably provide some pretty good data also. Those are those suggestions, and I'll be glad to take some questions.